Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast. Today, I am blessed with Scott Schang. Scott, how you doing?
Oh, thank you, my friend. I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Great to be here and to have all our incredible listeners listening. So, Scott, so I know you as really a marketing expert when it comes to video and content online and consumer direct and all those wonderful things. But you weren't always on that forefront. You're actually from the mortgage industry. So would you mind sharing
Oh,
your
yeah.
story with everybody here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my everything that I learned on the technology front was stuff that I built and it's kind of just the way that I built my business in the mortgage space. I got into the mortgage industry in 1998. I didn't originate until about 2000, 2001. And I remember, and here's a little context for your listeners. I remember basically refinances falling out of the sky because we were able to get people from 9% to 7.75 on a 30-year fixed. And they
Wow.
were losing their minds that they could lower their payment that much. And and so, when you hear us old guys say, listen, you don't need to panic. This is a normalizing market. This isn't our first rodeo. I can't emphasize enough how much this isn't the first time the market has had a little bit of contracting, and we always make it through it, and we always find huge opportunities. And we be offline. My path, my journey in mortgages is funny, and it's like when you talk to mortgage originators, very few, like single digit percent, under 5%, wanted to be a loan officer when they grew up. Like almost all of us just ended up at a mortgage company somewhere, telemarketing or doing something, and then saying, man, these guys are making a lot of money. They don't have college degrees. This is something that I want to get into. But I'm not a salesperson. I mean, I think I'm a lot like you. I'm kind of nerdy. I'm super introverted. I don't mind doing Zoom to a lot of people, but like I can't go to a mall. Like too many people freak me out. And and so what was interesting is when I started, the owner of our mortgage company told me I couldn't be a loan officer because I didn't have the right personality.
Huh.
So he made me be a processor for the top producing loan officer. And what I started doing is I started going through all the turn downs from the other loan officers, because back then everything was paper. And so we had a paper application, credit, and comparables. And they would like staple them and put not interested or NQ for not qualified. And we had bankers boxes, floor to ceiling, of those turned down leads. And I went in there one Saturday and I started going through them, and I'm like, there's deals in here. And my first year as an originator, I tripled the production of every other loan officer in that office
Wow.
by closing loans on their turn downs.
Wow.
And so that really, I mean, that was my introduction to the mortgage industry. And that really appealed to kind of, I'm a very empathic. I'm very empathetic about other people. When I see things, it's very easy. So I'm not good at just trying to sell people and talk people into it, but I can see their situation and say, tell me a little bit more about your goals. Let's move this thing around and let's see what we can figure out. So my introduction to the industry was that a consumer's options are literally limited to the experience and the effort of the loan officer that gets their lead.
Mm, that's powerful stuff.
And that made a huge impact on me. And so let's fast forward a few years. I was the top producer in this office for a few years, and I figured, oh, I know how to do this now. I'm going to start my own brokerage. And so that was probably 2004, 2005. So I got in a couple of good years. But even then, that was the height of the subprime business, right?
Yep.
And I guess one of the things that I'm more proud of in my career is that I didn't lose a single loan during the crash.
Wow.
I had one company, it was ABN AMRO on the East Coast, that they closed their doors before I had a signing. And I just reran DU. I was able to send it to another lender, get them signed and closed. So because I didn't do the subprime, I battled the subprime. I was constantly educating people about negative amortization and about the trickery that was going on in marketing and things like that. So when after the market crashed, I was like, man, we are 24/7 in the news cycle, that mortgage brokers are the root of all evil. And we just caused the entire collapse of the entire world. And I was like, you know what? Consumers really don't want to talk to loan officers now.
Right.
And so I learned WordPress in 2007, and I started writing about the things that I was encountering, just the questions and the challenges that I would have from people. And I started writing articles, and I wrote 2 to 3 articles a week for 10 straight years.
Wow.
And today that website gets about 25,000 unique visitors a month. And they are almost all consumers that have been told no. Or they got 72 phone calls in 24 hours because they filled out a lead form.
Yep.
And so at this point in my career, I just feel like I'm a consumer advocate for kind of lifting the veil on some of these marketing strategies and business models that have come up in the mortgage industry that I think really just create just a really poor experience for such a large number of consumers. And, and I think it's as simple. You can stop me anytime, but man, I get going on this stuff. But like, consumers do not go online to apply for a mortgage or fill out a form.
That's right.
We consumers go online to ask more questions about the topic we're trying to learn about.
That's right.
And that's missing in the real estate and the mortgage space, because lead forms are such big business.
Yep.
And we've got these big companies that have set up these call centers that are literally dropping billions of dollars a year to convince consumers that the way you get your questions answered is you fill out this form on the internet.
Yeah.
And we know, I say we, us insiders in this space, we know that a maximum of 2 to 4% of those lead forms ever turn into a loan with the company that generated the lead.
Yep.
And what that tells me, and what my personal experience is from my website, I get this unique feedback loop. Those consumers, a large majority of those consumers, are a little bit more informed, and they're going back to the internet where they started, and they're typing in a little bit more detailed questions, and they're still searching for answers. But I think they're less likely at that point to fill out a form. They're looking for that YouTube video. They're looking for that article that somebody wrote. They're looking for a title that has the exact words in it as their question or their problem. And so that's really what I'm doing with my career right now, is I am committed to keeping consumers out of call centers and empowering loan officers. And I'm just trying to shout from the rooftops, you have to share your experience so consumers can find it on Google and YouTube.
That is powerful.
I mean, I think social is important, but social is it's not the same medium. It's very interruption messaging. It's great for relationship building. But your Google and your YouTube, they are already problem aware.
Right.
Yep. They're already problem aware, and they're searching for an answer, or they're trying to clarify their questions, but they're looking to solve a specific problem. And social posts do not show up in Google searches.
Yep. That's right.
So there's this huge audience, Chris, that I think so many loan officers just kind of ignore, because they don't think they can compete with the Rockets and the Lending Trees and the bank rates. But I'm telling you, you can be a second opinion specialist. And I think it's more important in this market than ever before that guideline geeks unite and start making themselves accessible to the online consumer, because there is a vacuum of quality information about qualifying for a mortgage, especially in today's day and age, coming out of COVID, gig economies. We've got all this crazy stuff, and you got to know your guidelines. And there's so many of people out there that know their guidelines, but nobody knows about it.
Yep. Oh, that's so true. And so just speaking about conversations, like Google can become your first, second, or third best referral partner because they're the ones that are getting all the referrals every day. People are going to Google, typing in those long tail search phrases, and you can be the expert in that particular niche. Now, it is really difficult for them to be everything to everyone. And when I say them, that's our listeners. Like somebody listening to this, how do we make this actionable? How do we actually generate results using this? So can you talk to me about where you really find people getting results from being that online expert?
Yeah, and this is a tough one. And this is a tough sell because content marketing is a long game.
Oh, yeah.
And what we want to do is we want to write about VA loans. We want to write about FHA loans. Nobody cares about FHA loans or VA loans. People want to know, can I get a VA loan if there's a well on the property?
Yep.
Can I have a co-signer on an FHA loan? So there are riches and niches, and niches can be guidelines. It can be communities. It can be hyper-local communities. It can be geographic. It can be demographic. So I kind of, over the years, I've converted my website to a platform where I help loan officers get their message out. One of my guys who really just didn't ask questions, just started creating content. He started creating videos about traveling nurses. Because you think about COVID, right? And you have all these traveling nurses, if you've done work for traveling nurses or like union electricians, or like I was in California and you have set makers, prop makers, like their income is a rat's nest. And it's really hard. And a lot of loan officers don't understand it.
Right.
And they don't know how to explain it to an underwriter. So he started doing videos about traveling nurses. And like he's getting a steady stream of traveling nurses that are finding him from all over the country. He also started doing DSCR, which is just cash flow based investor loans, because he personally buys short and long-term rentals.
Right.
So he's just sharing his experience. So niches, 100% niches are your best option. And so this is interesting. So the way content works is you're going to write an article that's going to get 1 million views. It may not get a lot of business. It may get a lot of business. It's hard to tell. And then you've got hundreds of pieces of content that get 2 or 3 visits a month. But, and you're shaking your head, you know where I'm going with this. Every single month, I can get one loan from 25 different articles that get less than 100 visits a year.
That's right.
Because it's so specific and it's so niche. And so that's one way. The other way, like if somebody is just getting started, I would tell success stories. If you can tell success stories of people that came to you that were told no by somebody else. Because see, in our content, Chris, we don't have to address their specific problem. We just need to establish ourselves as a problem solver.
Yep.
And then once you earn that trust, they're going to feel comfortable with reaching out to you and saying, hey, I watched your whole video and my situation is almost exactly the same, except for this. And this is the guy you described was wearing a t-shirt. I was wearing a collar shirt when it happened to me. So it's like, it's almost never something that actually relates to their problem. Like, no,
Right?
the solution is exactly the same. It doesn't matter if it was a Sunday when it happened to you. It- and it's like, I see that over and over and over again. And those patterns just continuously encourage me that we're on the right path, talking about these things, talking about getting more exposure for your experience and your knowledge and getting it out there so consumers can find it, because it is not a fun experience filling out a mortgage form online.
Oh, absolutely. And there are so many people, Scott, that think that the Google boat has sailed. Like, okay, well, Zillow or all of these companies, they own Google. I shouldn't even bother trying because I'm
Yep.
too late to the game. But we know that the average, I think the statistic from Google that I most recently saw is that there's still over 100,000 phrases a day that are being typed into Google for the first time ever.
Wow.
And that's the long tail, and that's the birth of how we're changing our relationship with technology. So voice search completely changed the way that search parameters happen on Google. Because if you think about how your consumer now searches for information, especially your millennials and all of that, they're not typing into a computer anymore. They're using voice to text in order to type out what they want. So these search phrases are 2, 3, 4 times as long, and they're more specific because people trust Google to be able to find that very specific information for them. So it's not just like, how do I get help getting a mortgage or mortgage lender, right? It's like, how do I get a mortgage with a 480 or a 580 credit score? And they'll literally type out their whole scenario. So
Yeah.
if that's your person and that's the client that you're trying to go after, like you gave the phenomenal example of the traveling nurse loans. We interviewed a gentleman on the podcast a couple of days ago, and his niche was helping people that were investors that were looking to acquire private financing to purchase multi-unit residential.
Yeah.
And that
Pretty
was his.
specific.
Yeah, but he would post that on Google. He would write blog posts about it. He would post on
Yep.
Kijiji. He would post on all these classified sites. And then he was just saying, like, got mortgage questions? I guarantee an answer within an hour. And that was his
Yes.
whole thing. But the leads that were generated were phenomenal because they were his people looking for his information that generates, and it's not a ton of leads, but it's enough to make an exceptional difference in a mortgage business.
So on our website, we don't have lead forms on our websites. We have open-ended questions.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
I basically say, briefly categorize purchase, refinance. Out of these, which of these best describes your situation? Is there anything else you'd like me to know? We get paragraphs of details of exactly what their journey has been up to this point, exactly what their challenges are. So now when we're contacting them, we're not saying, hey, I heard you had questions about a mortgage. You're like, oh, I see here that you own this home and this home went up for sale and you're wondering if you can sell this one and use this one as a rental, because they give you all of these details. And man, consumer direct, Chris, is so strong, especially when you're sharing your expertise, because you don't get leads, you get conversations, because they don't reach out until they already trust you.
That's right.
You don't trick people into contacting you off of a video or an article.
Yep.
And so it's just a different experience. And you said something also earlier that I really, really loved. And I kind of laughed because at Carl's Freedom Club, I started talking about this concept, and I did a presentation and I named it the ultimate referral machine. And because when you create content and it shows up on Google, it's an army of clones of you referring business back to yourself.
That's right.
And that demographic of consumers, they are more loyal. You get more referrals from them. You get more repeat business from them because you saved the day.
Yep.
So you're building a past client database that, yes, you got to still nurture them and love on them. You got to do that, but they're less likely. They're not and I contrast this with people that are panicking right now and going to lead generation companies and just buying names and phone numbers, and you have no idea how that person got onto that form. We
Yep.
don't know what the ad was. It could have been to win a win a Biden phone or whatever. You remember the old Obama phone commercials? It's like, click here and win an iPad. And then they're selling it to mortgage companies. We don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's wild. And I think ownership of the content as well, because especially in your local marketplace, and we talk about becoming the mayor of your local economy and using digital to do that.
Yeah.
There's also the ability for you to get people to know you, like you, trust you over time, because people come to your site and they get that helpful content. They'll subscribe to your YouTube channel. They'll follow you on social media. They'll engage in that. And then you can get really, if you want to get more advanced with it, you can retarget all the people that land on your content site, show them even
100%.
more content.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You can definitely do that. And the cool thing about that also, Chris, is we don't realize how many people are actually paying attention to what we're doing,
Yeah.
because they don't reach out to us until they're ready. But it's not a weekly basis anymore, because I've been creating content in a different way, but it's not unusual for me to get emails from people that say, I don't know if you remember me, but you helped me out 5 years ago, and now I'm ready to move forward.
Wow.
Like, I get those a lot, because for me, it's never no, it's always not now.
Right.
And so I'm always trying to help put them on this path. But yeah, I think you bring up a really important point about Google. And I think a lot of people dismiss Google. And another thing that's really a pet peeve with me is I want to eliminate the term leads from our business, because they are not leads. Those are families that are motivated and they have questions about qualifying for mortgage. It doesn't mean they qualify, but those are human beings on the other side. And I wish we would stop talking about them as leads, because us as professionals, we can still build relationships with these people, whether they can help or not, or whether we can help them or not. And it's just that difference between, caring about consumers over commissions. What's your motivating factor?
Yeah.
Right. And if you care about the consumer, and you really care about building those relationships, man, I don't know if we've said this yet, but I know we said this before the show, but right now, I'm telling everybody that'll listen that the person that has the biggest trusted audience or the largest database is going to win on the other side of this market right now.
Yep.
Because you can still have hundreds of conversations a month, but not close any loans out of it. But if you impacted those people's lives and you left a good impression on their lives, and you have them in a database, and you have something to keep in front of them to remind them that you're a professional, whether it's retargeting or whether it's new content, or once a month, what happened in the market this month, when the rates drop, when inventory opens up, you're going to be first to market. Because mark my words, yes, this is a tight market, and you need to be building your business now to prepare for when rates drop, because all of those refinance shops are going to open right back up the second those rates hit a 0.5% drop.
Yep.
As soon as they drop, you're going to have call centers being set up like crazy, calling all of your clients, trying to streamline them or refi them, or whatever the case is. So this is the time when we go out and we start collecting acorns and getting them into our database, and loving on them, earning their trust, maintaining their trust.
That is so true. And you touched on a really good point there about database marketing, because we're all about database marketing. We make the phone calls to our clients' databases. And I believe that families that come to you that are interested today that might not qualify are certainly opportunities in the future. if you keep them as opportunities. If you just say no,
Yes.
next, and you don't keep in touch with them, you're never going to win that opportunity. My dad's mortgage business was, he was always getting referrals from people that he never closed because he treated people
Yes.
right. He was completely honest with them. And if there was a better option out there at, in the Canadian environment, it's a little bit different, but sometimes you can get a better deal from the bank by not going through a broker. And he would just tell people straight up, hey, go to your bank. But the next time you run into somebody that's looking to buy, sell, or refinance, send them to me first, and I'll make sure they end up in the right position. He did so much business off deals he never did.
Yeah.
Those referrals are such an important thing. So when we get to content creation and we get to what to send your database, can you talk to me about A, how do you find the ideas for content? And
Yeah.
then B, once you create the content, how do you syndicate it? How do you get it out there? How do you get the most exposure from a piece of content that you create?
Yeah, I'm really lazy when it comes to content, and that's why I'm such a huge fan of video.
Uh,
Uh, because we're transcribing the video, so we're doing the video. So content ideas. There's a few things that I can share that are really cool. Um, the first one is, what conversations are you having with consumers? So that's how I wrote articles for 10 years.
Yeah.
So the conversations that I would have, we all know that there are not 10,000 questions about qualifying for a mortgage. There are 10 questions asked 10,000 ways.
Yes.
And the more time you spend on the phone with consumers, you understand that. So I would start to see trends. I would hear the same things over and over again. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's that, and that's when I started writing. And that's why I have hundreds and hundreds of articles, and many of them get double digit, visitors a month. Telling success stories. I think telling success stories is the lowest hanging fruit. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It shows us in our best light, because it shows us taking somebody and not the easy ones. That's not a story. The story is this family came to me and they were getting divorced, and the wife didn't have a job, but she needed a house, and you're telling the whole story and you're unpacking it. The other thing that happens is, when we start telling those stories, we start remembering the experience, and we start remembering that client crying on the phone because nobody else would help them, and you got them. And so it makes it easier for you to be emotional when you're creating the content, because you're sort of really just recalling that amazing experience. Mortgage currency, currentcy.com. It is a service, not an expensive service. It's not free based on Carl's guidelines. I think it's over $50, but every single month, they send out a digest of all of the agency guideline updates.
Oh, no way.
So I'm always looking for, is this guideline update going to cause confusion for call centers?
Right.
So if you look at the traffic on my website, I really have these really big batches of really, really big guideline changes. The first one I started writing about in 2011 was buying after bankruptcy, foreclosure, and short sale. The next one that I hit, that we still get thousands and thousands of visitors a month, is qualifying for a mortgage with student loans, because those guidelines changed in 2015. And that's actually, if you're going to go the guideline route, I look for a guideline change that Fannie's guideline is different from Freddie's.
Right.
FHA is different from both of them. VA is different from all three of them, and USDA is different from all four of them. So if it's one problem, but all of the different agencies treat it a little bit differently, those are really good topics. And then the last one that I would probably recommend is, I'm a huge fan of Answer the Public.
Okay.
So I think I've heard you talk about Answer the Public, and what that is it's a search engine for auto-suggested search terms in Google.
Yep.
And that's a really, really good place to, and again, I want to write some VA I want to write a VA article about VA manual underwriting. So you type in VA manual underwriting and you see what search terms and how much traffic there is for manual underwriting. And then that gives you a bunch of articles, because that's all it really is it's giving you a search engine results page. And then you start going through the articles and you basically curate the perfect post from the top 5 articles.
That is awesome. Well, so there is no shortage of content out there, especially
No,
with those resources out there. You can, I mean, it's endless, and especially
it
when you
is.
look at the long tail of really getting your perfect customer. So you find that perfect piece of content, you write it, and I would highly recommend to everybody that you get a Zoom account, and there's a plugin that you can get for Zoom. It's called Fathom. It's called the Fathom Note Taker, Fathom. And what it does is it transcribes your Zoom calls in real time while you're having them. And then after your call is done, it gives you the transcription of the meeting. And so you can just pop onto a free Zoom account, record yourself answering the questions just like you would talk to a client, and it's producing a blog article while you're speaking. So it can be super simple to find your topics, easy to create them. You don't have to spend hours on, writing or being a professional writer, because people like to read content that's spoken anyway. It's more conversational. People will get through it better. You've got that resource. Then what do you do with it? Is it just a blog post? Is it blog post and YouTube? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a video. We're transcribing the videos using Descript. That's another really cheap, easy way to do the transcriptions. So we're posting it as a blog post. We're posting it on YouTube with the transcription. Google My Business. I think we should be posting on Google My Business. It used to be like the 14-day Snapchat thing, like the post would last. I would put it under your what's new,
Yep.
both the video and the transcription. I would definitely put it on LinkedIn, and we're seeing really good results. What's happening is, even if the originators are doing consumer direct, like you're talking your videos to the consumers, LinkedIn is a professional network, and we're seeing a lot of referral partners seeing your information and reaching out and saying, wow, that's an interesting program. I might have somebody for you. So we're seeing a lot of business coming back from that. And then the other part of that, and I don't do that anymore, but what we recommend everybody do is take your video and then just pull out snippets of it for your Instagram and your TikTok, even though TikTok's up to 10 minutes now. And Instagram, I think, is pretty close to that too. But no, I say you record it once, chop it up, and repurpose it as much as you possibly can. But I think the Google and the challenge, Chris, is how do you get it on Google? You have to have a website with a blog roll.
That's right.
Or you have to contribute to a community of writers. Like, there used to be, what was that called? Remember, there used to be all of these little community groups where you could participate and you could be a writer in this community, and they would target local communities. So it's kind of like a collaborative sort of thing. And what I'm also talking to people about is contact your local newspapers. Almost all local news stations have a website, and they're in the need of 24/7 news too, especially if you're in a small community.
Oh, yeah.
Send those out and ask them if you can submit your videos or your transcriptions or articles to local news stations or newspapers in your community, because they're looking for content too.
Man, amazing.
Yeah, for me, it's also, and then here's the other thing is when you get it on all of those platforms, we're building a library of trust assets.
Yep.
Because if they didn't find you first, if they were referred to you, they're going to Google your name and what's coming up. When they see all of these videos and all of these, again, the cool thing about Google owning YouTube is if you show up organically on the first page of Google, you're also going to show up in that strip of YouTube videos on the first page.
Yep.
And what I'm finding is you're more likely to show up on the YouTube videos than you even are on the organic search results.
Hmm.
And so when a consumer sees that, they're like, man, this person's everywhere and they're helping everybody.
Yep.
And that works for relationships, that works for business, that works for everything. I think just putting it out there and becoming, let's call it internet famous. I think it works in all aspects of your business.
Yep, I could not agree more. Well, Scott, thank you for being so generous with your time. Now, this community that you've created where loan officers can come in and take advantage, not take advantage is wrong, but you've got a community where they can plug into your decades worth of creating articles and tap into that lead source. Could you share where people can find information about that, how people can contact you?
Sure. I will give you a link. I'll give you a link to the community, so that you can put it in the show notes, because it's not an easy one. But I'll give you a link to that. And that's where all of my classes are. You can go to findmywayhome.com and see what we're doing and how we're doing it. And that's what I recommend people do. I'm not saying we've got it right, but we're having a lot of success with the way we're doing it. And if that gives you ideas, but the community that I'm going to send you the link for, it's completely free. And I actually have a riches and niches strategy here that I break down all of the different niches and to give you ideas under every single different niche style. There's a ton of information on there for free. And we do have a business. We help people do this as well. You can find that. We're not pitching that. If you like what we're talking about and you get involved in the community, you're going to find out about our solutions. But the most important thing for me is getting a bunch of like-minded people that embrace the fact that they want to be a second opinion specialist and kind of really learning how to go out there and save those consumers.
That is amazing. Well, Scott, we will make sure that we have that in the show notes. And thank you again for being on the show today and sharing. It was a fantastic conversation.
My pleasure. I wish we could do this for 3 hours. I love talking to people like you, man. We're like brothers from another mother sometimes. It seems like we could talk for hours.
Absolutely. And if you found value in the conversation, go ahead and head on over to iTunes, hit us with a 5-star rating and review. If you're seeing this on social, hit us with a like and comment below with the big takeaway that you took away from today's episode. And make sure you hit that share button as well, because we are all in this mortgage industry together. And the more that we help each other, the more our entire industry grows. So again, Scott, thank you for being on the show, and I can't wait to have you back.
Appreciate you. Thank you.